Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared sharp betting information.
Welcome back to Podcast 101 of 2025. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media / the Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by FanDuel Sports, a proud partner of the NFL. If you like to support the Odds Breakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. Pick any of our winning cappers to get to the premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com. If nothing else, please visit the Odds Breakers and become a free Picks and Telegram subscriber. What a heck of a week we have going on, my friends, because college football news is just coming left and right. You know, it's lots going on in the coaching changes here, and obviously just the old internet blowing up over the committee and the choice for the college football playoffs, which clearly makes no sense to anybody with any sort of college football brain, but it's the environment that we have, and that's the environment that we have to deal with. And we have a great guest to talk all that through, as well as the 9 conference championship games coming up this weekend, and Joshua Nunn from the Action Network. Josh is fantastic. I'm very excited to talk with him over some of these big games and obviously the whole landscape of college football. Lots can change this weekend, especially when it comes to, well, the Big 12 and the ACC championship. Even the smaller conferences like the American Athletic Conference, I'm pretty sure James Madison themselves has been screwed out of it. So unfortunately, they don't have a chance. But it's just interesting to me that people are just complaining, but they're not stating the obvious when it comes to the college football playoff committee. And I will state the obvious when Josh comes on. I've stated it somewhat before. But no, more importantly, these college football coaching changes are a big effect to our handicapping strategies when it comes to 2026. You know, these coaching changes are fun. They're interesting. And I'm just going to quick blow through them rather than going through ATS like I usually do, because we only have 9 games, and I've went over these teams' ETS multiple times, as well as their totals. We'll be mentioning some of it most likely during our handicaps. But obviously, Virginia Tech out Brent Pry earlier this season and in James Franklin. I think that's a massive hire. Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy out. Eric Morris from North Texas in. Kent State, Kenny Burns out. And Mark Carney in. That obviously happened earlier. Cal, Justin Wilcox out. Tosh Lupoy is in. An interesting hire from Oregon, a coordinator, a defensive coordinator. Auburn, Hugh Freeze froze himself out of there, as well as Alex Golish from South Florida coming in. Great hire, I think. LSU, Brian Kelly out. Lane Kiffin in. The most controversial, crazy hire of the 2025 season. Penn State, James Franklin out, but nobody's in. Kalani Sitake from BYU was supposed to be the guy, but he denied it. I find that really interesting. I mean, money-wise, he's going to take a hit, but maybe he has a chance of making the playoffs more at BYU. Florida, Billy Napier out. John Sumrall in. Sam Pittman out. Ryan Silverfield in. I don't like that hire at all. You know what's funny about John Sumrall? He's kind of been rising since he coached Troy and did well at Tulane, but it doesn't feel like it's much of a difference from hiring Billy Napier in the first place from a lower conference. You know, I just think he doesn't have the same punch as somebody that could recruit over there in Florida and that has SEC experience. It's just, you know, Florida's got the money. It just was a little bit of a head scratcher to me. Sam Pittman out, Ryan Silverfield in. Terrible hire for Arkansas. What else is new? UCLA, Deshaun Foster out. Bob Chesney is in from James Madison. Ooh, I like that hire. Stanford, Troy Taylor is out, and Tavita Pritchard is in. I believe he came from the Washington Commanders. I don't know much about him. I'll have to do a little bit more research on him. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin clearly out, and the defense coordinator, Pete Golding, is taking over. Too late to really find a coach because of the stupid rules. But, I don't know. I think that Pete Golding could do a good job. Maybe just give him a year and then look in the market next year, like what probably Penn State has to do. Michigan State, Jonathan Smith out, Pat Fitzgerald in. I don't get that one so much. Pat Fitzgerald, I know they're going to invest a ton, like $1 billion into their program, facilities, everything. But Pat Fitzgerald had 2 really bad seasons at Northwestern before he was booted. Unfairly booted, but still, it's a head scratcher. Colorado State, Jay Norvell out, Jim Mora Jr. in. Good hire, I think. North Texas, Eric Morris obviously promoted, and Neil Brown is now in. Neil Brown was a pretty good coach when he was at Troy. Not so great at West Virginia, but we'll see if he grew up a little bit here for North Texas. He's a pretty sharp offensive mind. Let's look at UConn. Jim Moore is out. We don't have a replacement yet. Oregon State, Trent Bray is out. Jamarcus Shepard is in. Shepard was an assistant head coach and offense coordinator in Alabama, so we'll see what he has learned from Kalen DeBoer. He was also with, Kalen DeBoer in Washington. This could be a really good hire. Coastal Carolina, Tim Beck's out, no hire yet. USF, Alex Golish is out. And Brian Hartline comes in, which I think is a very good hire, offense coordinator at Ohio State. I think this is a great hire for USF. Tulane, John Summerall out, nobody yet. Ryan Silverfield out at Memphis, nobody hired yet. Kentucky, Mark Stoops out. And Will Stein is in. I don't know. I think Will Stein is a decent hire. Kentucky's not going to really, bring a ton of people in. But here's the good news. Will Stein has all that offensive coordinator experience that he had at UTSA. Then Dillingham left, and he goes to be an offensive coordinator at Oregon. So, he's a great offense, and maybe that's what Kentucky needs. And Kansas State, Chris Kleiman's out. And Colin Klein is in. I think Chris Kleiman made his mark, and he's retiring. He's getting old, but Colin Klein, lots of I guess muster left. He was at Texas A&M and did a pretty good job over there at OC, so not a bad hire over in Kansas State. There you have it so far. Still a few more pieces to move, obviously, but we'll cover that later. I think it's time to talk a little college football. Let's bring on our wonderful guest, Mr. Josh Nunn from the Action Network. Now I am very excited to welcome back a fantastic college football capper and great friend of the show, and Josh Nunn from the Action Network. You can follow Josh on X at StepOnADuck1. Josh, my man, thanks for coming back on the show. It's been a fast-moving college football season. We're already here at Conference Championship Week. How are you doing?
I'm really doing well, man. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a privilege to be on your great program. And you know what? You're so right about the season. It comes and goes in the blink of an eye. You and I are guys that are cut from a different cloth in the fact that we cherish those 14 Saturdays in the fall. We love the marathon Saturdays more than about anything. College hoops is getting in the full swing, and that's fun too, but there are nothing like those 14 Saturdays, my man. So sad to see the season end, but the conference championship weekend is here, and I'm excited to break down these 9 matchups.
Absolutely. And there's still a lot of fun to be had because we have a lot of bowl games to discuss, a lot of movement in the market. There's first to market. There's a lot of great things that you can learn from guys like Josh when it comes to December coming up here. There's also coaching ATS. injury news, people opting out. Stuckey over there with Josh at the Action Network has a wonderful article he does every year. So I always recommend that. Andrew chiming in. Real funny, Andrew. Last week, the bear. This week, the duck. I think I need a nickname. Oh, Andrew's great. I don't know what I'd be. The Kiev is not really an animal. It's a city in the Ukraine.
The Wisconsin wagon.
I hope to be a badger, just not this year. They were a force for a while. I'm hoping that we get a little resurgence next year. Maybe everybody doesn't believe in us, and it's one of our years next year. That'd be fun. But no, I'll think of a nickname, Andrew. Maybe you can give me one, my friend. So that'd be cool. Here we are. It is a lot of movement here going on in college football, Josh. I mean, we have all these coaching changes already happening, and we knew that was coming on Sunday, Monday, and it's just kind of like first to market with some of these guys. But I have to ask you, what is the most surprising coaching change to you?
I've got two of them here. I was really surprised that Bob Chesney jumped to UCLA so quickly. I kind of felt like if he would have stuck around another year at JMU and put together another good campaign, that he could have found something a little bit more localized or regionally to where he's been coaching. And the cross-country move for him to LA just seemed a little bit strange to me. Also very surprising how it shook out with Arkansas, how they had about 3 or 4 guys they couldn't land. Felt like they ended up settling on Silverfield. And doesn't that just seem like one where 3-4 years from now, that sort of dance partner with Arkansas and Silverfield is more likely to not work out than it is to work out?
Yes. Yes. That's I mean, with all that Walmart money, they would have done a little bit better out there too. And that's funny because I have a follow-up question as well to this. My most surprising one is I think it's Pat Fitzgerald to Michigan State. I guess it kind of caught me by surprise. Now, maybe you knew about it. I don't know. I just feel that Pat Fitzgerald, he's not the guy I hired to completely turn my program around. He had success on the COVID year, but the years after that, and before he got unfairly fired by Northwestern, he went like 4 and something. It was really bad. He lost a lot of games the next 2 years. And even though I believe he wasn't treated properly at Northwestern and was called out by a bunch of kids that, just had excuses and probably won't even probably don't even show up for practice half the time. I'm still kind of scratching my head. If you're rebuilding your program, investing $1 billion in there, you kind of bring in Pat Fitzgerald. Okay, all right, yeah. I mean, have fun in the Big Ten there. I guess it's better now that they're not on the east side of the Big Ten instead of the west side. It's kind of mixed up, so I guess that's a little bit better. But that was a little bit surprising. So I guess I should go to who did the worst, because you already threw out Ryan Silverfield. What's the worst coaching hire with respect to the power and expectations of the program to what they got?
Yeah, I would think it's that one. Just today it was announced that UAB hired the guy from FCS Presbyterian who plays at the non-scholarship Pioneer Football League level. And if I was UAB, they had a chance to right the wrong. They hired Trent Dilfer, and that saga didn't play out properly.
I knew that was going to happen.
You just had to make one phone call to Brian Vincent at ULM. That's the guy who was the interim coach there that the players wanted after Bill Clark left. And all they would have had to do is pick up the phone and say, we're going to send a plane and a check. You fill out the amount. We'll see you in Birmingham. And I'm really surprised they didn't land on Brian Vincent, who assuredly would have come. It's tough to say who's done the worst job. I think maybe Cal stretched, maybe Stanford stretched with who they hired. I thought maybe those two programs could have maybe waited around for a better gig. I'm surprised nobody in the MAC's been poached yet. The MAC, the coaching carousel with the MAC usually favors those coaches getting a step up in job, and we haven't seen a lot of movement there yet. So interesting to see. But I think, the other thing we'll do is 2-3 years from now, we'll look back and I think we'll think that Virginia Tech made out as bandits getting James Franklin, and I think that's going to end up being a really good hire for them.
I agree. Alex Mortensen did a very good job for what he was dealt with at UAB. He even won that huge game against, I think it was Memphis. It was Memphis, I believe.
Yeah, battle for the bones.
No doubt. And I mean, I'm not saying I would hire him immediately but God, I think, a coordinator job, another good coordinator job in a group of 5 school at least is what he's warranted for what he did. And now he's got some good head coaching experience. So I agree with that. It's funny. Andrew's like, Penn State's the worst because what the hell are they doing? I actually had them written down as one of the worst because, I mean, how embarrassing is it to try to get the Brigham Young coach Sataki in, and he says no? That's a little bit embarrassing. I actually didn't like the fit anyway. I didn't think Sataki's a recruiter. I think he's a balls to the wall head coach, and the man's got integrity. I respect that. Yeah, but he's also got an easier path to the college football playoff probably there because Penn State and the way the Big Ten's been treated, if they keep losing to Michigan and Ohio State, and now maybe Indiana, and it's kind of tough for them. And maybe he felt out of place, and there's a lot of weird pressures out there. I think he would have got a lot more money, but I respect the integrity thing for sure. But then you look on the other side, Lane Kiffin. Are you mad at him? I'm not mad at him. I'm mad at the system, really. People forget so much, and I'm kind of just going off on this tangent, but people forget that if you have a bad year coaching, they can just can you. You're done. It's like you expect you're supposed to stay at the school. First of all, the rules are terrible. They shouldn't be recruiting now. So actually, I think I would have given Lane Kiffin some credit for staying through the playoffs from an integrity side, but he's also kind of screwing his future. He was kind of in a catch-22 when he had the opportunity to move to LSU. So what's funny is I'm very neutral on what happened there, but I do think LSU's improved.
Yeah, and I think that it's an upgraded hire, and I think if Lane has won consistently most of the places that he's been, and I think if he can get it turned around quickly here, they could be a team that's definitely on the come. Probably not next year. And it's funny, one of these books that's out there that most people can get access to already has LSU's regular season win total posted up for next year at 9.5. So
8.5 or 9.5.
There's a lot of belief. 9.5.
That's a little high. That's a little high because LSU's always got a tough schedule, and they'll play Clemson next year. And Clemson's bad, but maybe you never know what you're going to get with them. And they always play Bama. I don't like that. No, I go under.
And it's so funny. But if you think about Penn State, wouldn't it just be funny if 2-3 years from now Penn State's trying to poach the Virginia Tech coach?
Oh God!
Trying to poach Franklin and have him come back?
No, that ain't happening. But I do agree with Andrew saying they're going to have to promote the interim and try again next year. It's too late now. Why? This is a great year to just kind of take a breather, and maybe you get hurt a little bit in recruiting for it, but you're still Penn State. You're not. It's not like people are going to go to Pitt because of it, right? I mean, you do that, and then you go hard, like for your next guy next year, and you're ready to do it. It's a tough job, but the worst thing that can happen is all of a sudden the interim does pretty good and wins 10 and goes 10-2. Then you feel like you're stuck with them. But they were late to the party, and I thought Penn State was one of the worst jobs done. I also think Cal with Tosh Lupoy. Do you really think Oregon's defense was that great with all that talent that they had there? I don't think so. I mean, I remember last year everyone was just running all over them, and sure they went undefeated because of their offense. But Cal losing the defensive coordinator, well, let's just face it. He was a defense coordinator with the Badgers before Wilcox went to Cal, and then you hire another defensive guy that his defense wasn't good enough to play. I don't like that hire so much. And I agree that Ryan Silverfield is right there as one of the worst coaches because he's just not ready for the big time.
Well, and Silverfield has had some successful years, but if you look at some of their games situationally and some of the games Memphis has lost, there have been such puzzling handlings of situational football that directly fall on the head coach. Timeout usage, third down, and red zone situational play calling late in games. It's been baffling. And Memphis just has not really wowed me over the last 5 seasons. And I want a coach that's going to make a splash, that's going to provide the wow factor, that's going to have proven that they can get it done at that level. That's why it's hard to hire a defensive coordinator that's not had the head coaching gig too. You can have a great X's and O's defensive coordinator, a guy who can scheme it up on the whiteboard, a guy who can coach linebackers or defensive line, but now you're asking him to run the entire show and orchestrate the whole operation. And it just doesn't work out as often as you might think. It's really tricky when you're giving a guy a shot who hasn't had a lot of coaching experience, and you coach on one side of the ball. I guess
Yeah.
you got to break out somewhere, but that's
Right.
tricky for Cal. I thought they could have maybe plucked somebody else.
Exactly. So, not to keep on this subject, but I do think that Virginia Tech's hire was the best in Franklin from where the school was and what Franklin's done. And I do believe that even though Chesney is out of place at UCLA and it might not have been his greatest choice, it was still a great hire for UCLA, in my opinion, because I think he's a fantastic coach on the up. CFB playoff committee. How close are they to being right, Duck?
I thought they did a pretty good job. I think the top four are fair. I think Texas Tech's body of work has been really solid this year. Ole Miss now slides up and is almost assured to get in. And there was some questions last week on if they would pull the plug on Ole Miss with the fact that their entire coaching staff is now in Baton Rouge. I thought it was very interesting where they slated Notre Dame at 10. And assuming BYU loses, which we can get into the game later, but assuming BYU loses, Miami bumps up to 11. If Duke were to beat Virginia, the way it's written is that you get the top 5 highest ranked conference champions, which would be the SEC, you'd have the Big 10, you'd have the Big 12, you would have the American, and then the 5th would be the Sun Belt. So the ACC champ, if it was Duke, would not go. And I think with Miami and Notre Dame being slated 11th and 10th, that would justify the committee to bump Miami because they have the head-to-head win, and then you put the ACC team in at large as opposed to having the conference champion go. Because if Duke wins, they're not going.
Well, if Duke wins, you said top 5 conference champions, so wouldn't James Madison be in then?
Yeah, you'd have 2 group of 5. You'd have James Madison and then North Texas or Tulane.
Oh my God, go Duke! Yeah, a little number on James Madison, but that's still super weird. I think that's even more awful when it comes to true power and deserving and all that. That's absolutely silly. If James Madison played in the ACC, they'd have 3 losses, at least. I think, you can argue easily they would lose to Miami, Clemson, or Virginia or Georgia Tech. There's just a lot of teams I think that could have beat Pitt maybe. So, and I love James Madison, don't get me wrong. But man, that makes it even more terrible. And I guess I almost think, why don't they just go away from the rules and say, this is a weird year. We're not going to have the ACC champ in, and we're not going to have the 5th group of 5 conference champion. It's weird how they written it because they probably never assumed that the Sun Belt would even be of discussion. Maybe they thought maybe once in a great while the AAC would be there, but man, it's just mind blowing. But now it's like the head-to-head problem is what I have. Why do you have Notre Dame ranked ahead of Miami after all this crap about schedules? Do you really want to see no frickin' big games the first 3 weeks of college football? What are you doing, committee, for your own greed? I think that's horrible. Everyone's like, they're incompetent. I think there's some incompetence there, Josh. I don't think any of them know what you do and some of the stuff that I do and what are the people that we relate with do. Of course, Sagarin's ratings doesn't even have a top 6 SEC team in, and they're going to get 4 or 5. What? It just makes no sense. They're just a boys' club there protecting, the SEC, and it's wrong. It's probably somewhat fraudulent because numbers prove it's wrong, but nobody's ever going to stop them. The government doesn't want to get involved in something like that. No one's going to stop them. It's almost like saying, Microsoft's a monopoly. You're going to do it. No, but I also think that if they don't put Miami in, man, it's gonna F things up for the year. I think people are going to really complain if Notre Dame goes in too. So it's like, do you pull them both out? I don't know. Really,
yeah, that problem really manifests itself if Duke wins. If Virginia wins, then Virginia goes, and then the ACC has representation. The bigger problem is when you look at the product on the field, a team like Oklahoma appears to be firmly safe. And should they be? That product has looked terrible for 6 weeks, especially on offense. They're broken on offense. The defense is very legitimate. But
the real problem is the SEC getting 4 or 5 teams when they're not in the top. That's the problem. That's the simple problem. You could say, sorry, SEC, you're getting 3 teams in. The Big Ten's only getting 3. You're getting 3. That's more than all the other conferences. Then you can have both Miami and Notre Dame in. With the BYU loss, still gets a little dicey. But, man, I think that would solve it. And guess what? If they played 9 conference games, those records are a little different. I mean, this would be the year to do that. But you can prove that they're completely rigging the system for that because that's what they're paid to do. And it's dishonest, unfair. But we can complain all about it we want. It's not gonna change anything, Josh. But here's now instead of me complaining, here's the good news. I like having 12 playoff teams. I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna watch it all December. I'm gonna bet on it. I'm gonna talk about it. That's my positive side. No matter who they throw in, I don't care if they throw in frickin' No, I won't say UMass, but I don't care if they put in UNLV against UAB because it's something we can talk about and it's something we can bet about. So that's the fun about the college football experience now that at least it's been extended into January and now late into January. So I am excited as usual, just like I was last year about that part. Let's get into these games, my man. Huge start on the conference championship weeks. We have 9 conference championship games starting on Friday. First one is Troy versus James Madison. James Madison opened around 20.5, 21, and now this thing's been powering up to 24. It's kind of took a short little break back down to 23.5. The total of this is 47.5. What is James Madison going to do in this situation?
Well, so I'll start by saying I've got a future on James Madison. I believe you do as well. It's been a really great team this year in Sun Belt play, head and shoulders above the rest. I hope they win the game. I don't think they're really in danger of losing on the field. The game does seem one-sided, but we have seen James Madison play around with their food time and time again this season. They struggled with a really bad Liberty team for a half. The Georgia State game, they only won by 7. Louisiana Lafayette gave them a major test. Marshall, Wazoo. I mean, the list goes on and on. And is this team at all distracted by the Bob Chesney situation and him leaving? I really don't know. I would expect James Madison to be fully locked in. The defense is nasty. First nationally in defensive success rate, second against the pass, 8th in preventing explosive plays. I think Troy will struggle to move the football consistently, and they will struggle to score enough to stay in the game from the perspective of actually winning it. But you know what? Those Troy dudes on defense, they're on scholarship too, and we've seen Troy play up significantly against some of the stronger They led Clemson at the half. They played Memphis to 7-7 at half before Goose Crowder went out with injury in that game. And you know what? A lot of people's darling in the Sun Belt, Southern Miss, Troy went down there and won the game on the field, extended the margin in the fourth quarter. Goose Crowder has had now a couple of games to get in rhythm after coming back from injury. My power ratings can't get anywhere close to this number. I've got this at about 19.3. So I do see value in Troy, but I'm not diving in yet. My buy point on the Trojans is if we were to see 24.5, I might take a swing. That's not saying I want Troy to win. I don't. I want James Madison to win the game. I think they will win the game. But JMU's real chance to impress the committee was against Wazoo, and they were down by 10 in the fourth quarter and needed a lot to happen just to win the game. And they just seemed a little jerky offensively at times against inferior competition. So I do think there's a chance that Troy can just kind of hang around. That defense is pretty good.
It is pretty good, but then I'm looking at I can't lay the number either because I'm nowhere near close to it either. I'm probably in the late teens in my power ratings, but it's a situation where James Madison, whether they can or not, wants to blow this team out just to show everybody that they're deserving, whether they get in or not. They're going to be the biggest Duke fans of all time, I think, over there. Maybe the fans will go to the Duke game, the Duke-Virginia game.
The Dukes will be rooting for Duke.
There you go. And Alvin Fresh one, love the Duck, great football handicapper. I agree. I when they stepped up in class to Old Dominion won 33-0. Probably could have been more if they weren't shutting them out. Texas State puts up 48 on them. I'm wondering if I do tinkle with this team total over 34.5 at -125. That's what I'm kind of looking at. I don't trust the under 10.5 on Troy's side. I think a garbage touchdown could easily be scored. Over 10.5 is juiced at -130. That's probably right. It's funny you see this total 47 and the team totals are 10.5 and 34.5. You add that up, it's 45 points. So clearly juiced to the over. Yeah, that's my lean right now. But I do agree that James Madison is the much better team. Troy has definitely improved. And maybe Troy can shut some people up this week. I don't know. I mean, if you're Troy, you want to win the conference, but you can definitely go and shut them up. So that'd be interesting. Andrew Clark says, I keep thinking back to the other trip to Virginia when they played Old Dominion. Well, there you go, right?
And, that was such a spot for Old Dominion, a Thursday night primetime home game, and they were in that same spot last year against Georgia Southern, and Old Dominion blew the doors off of them. So that was definitely an Old Dominion spot and a real tough spot for Troy. It was interesting because I don't recall if Goose was back for that one or not, but there was a period of the season where Goose Crowder was cleared to come back, but they still went with Kilcrease, and he just played like his job was at stake, looking over his shoulder, made mistakes. It got really ugly for Troy before they finally went back.
Right. Good call. It's funny. I mean, you look A+B+C. James Madison destroys Old Dominion, and Old Dominion destroyed them. But yeah, it was a bad spot for Troy. That's not how we handicap games. Team total or nothing for me. Let's move on to the next one. Kennesaw State versus Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State's a home dog at +2.5. The total is 59.5. What do you have for us on this one?
Yeah, I looked into this pretty extensively. The only real concern for my play would be there could be a little bit of spotty weather, some thunderstorms and some rain. Shouldn't affect the play too badly, but definitely something to watch here. Kennesaw is going to be able to throw the football here. Both their quarterbacks, Dexter Williams and Amari Odom, have played really well this season. They've combined to throw for over 3,000 yards. Kennesaw State has found a rhythm on offense, getting explosive plays, and Jacksonville State gives that up defensively. 108th defensively, surrendering explosive pass plays. And Jacksonville State's also a pretty poor pass coverage team, 4th worst in CUSA this season per PFF. I look at the Gamecocks, they're pretty banged up at linebacker, and they've got a couple of defensive linemen that are going to be out. So their defense could struggle to get stops here if Kennesaw's pass game is clicking. On the other side, Jacksonville State with Cam Cook and Caden Creel, they should be able to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball some more. Kennesaw gives up explosives on the ground. I would imagine that they really struggle to stop the run game here. And Kennesaw also has a couple linebackers out. So Cam Cook should feast in this situation for Jacksonville State. Both these teams are going to be able to move it against the other defenses. If you look at the previous meeting earlier this season, Kennesaw left so much meat on the bone there. They had 579 yards in that game, completely shredded Jacksonville State. They had several red zone turnovers, a couple 4th down fails. I think that both these teams will cash in for touchdowns in the red zone here. I like over 59.5.
You're speaking my language. Look, if you're worried about this weather and the rain, there's going to be no wind right now, very low wind, and the rain is better for these kinds of teams because the running back knows where he's going to go. These are rushing teams, and it's a lot harder to make the cut when your body weight's going one way and the running back's going the other when you're not expecting it. And that's why running games like these two power run teams are good for the over. So I actually like it even a little bit more, my man. Kennesaw State has vastly improved since week 1. It's so fun to see these two Conference USA teams that were just FCS teams, 3 years ago, my man? And they're now both playing for a conference championship. As you saw, Jacksonville State won it last year, and they scored over 50 points last year. So they're kind of defending their title. Now, these two teams played a couple weeks back, and Jacksonville State won by 9-10 points. But if you look at the misleading final score, Jacksonville State was outgained by over 120 yards by Kennesaw. They just happened to have 4 turnovers. Well, Kennesaw cleaned it up and just kind of ran the table since then. And they also, like you said, have those injuries. But the speed of these teams and the tempo, I think, is going to take this over the total of 59.5. When you told me that you were looking at the total in this, I kind of knew which way you were going to go. Kennesaw State ranks 17th in tempo, while Jacksonville State ranks 42nd. I think Jacksonville State's going to be the one doing the chase. Neither of these rush defenses are good enough to stop each other. I think it's just going to be touchdowns all the way, my man. Let's go with that over 59. I really love it, Josh.
Love it.
Let's move on to the next game. We have North Texas versus Tulane. Tulane plus 2.5. Total 66.5. So this is the biggest total out of the whole weekend. I'm not really super inclined to bet this total. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I studied this game. I wanted to find a play, and I didn't. Maybe you have something better for me. But North Texas is ranked, and all the power ratings, including mine, a little bit higher than Tulane. Now, there is a big path to victory for Tulane, right? And that path to victory is running the football, in my opinion. I think Tulane has to slow this game down. They do not want to get in a shootout with North Texas. I believe the coach is still coaching this game, right, Josh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the difference between going from SEC to SEC than maybe Group of Five going up. I think it's you're a little bit more acknowledged that you're allowed to do those things, but Summerall is going to be there, and I see this kind of ticking up. If I'm coach, I'm draining the clock. I'm running the football because statistically, that is a little bit more of North Texas's weakness. If they cannot stop the run, ranking 110th in opponent rushing play success rate, this could be a long day for North Texas, and that is the path to victory. Not saying that coaches make the right decision all the time, Josh, and I'm not saying that North Texas won't jump them and then put them on the back of their heels where that's going to happen. I think a live betting situation is good for this, but if I get that 3 I'm waiting back for because I missed it in the beginning, then I'll probably play Tulane, Josh.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I love North Texas. They've been a darling team of mine all season. You're going to go broke betting against Tulane when they're at home, and they're very, very good at home, undefeated at home this season. I think the path for Tulane is to run the football. I don't know if North Texas's run defense is as bad as the metrics show. And the reason I say that is they've played Army, Navy, Rice, and South Florida this season. And then other teams they've played, a lot of those rushing yards have been surrendered in the second half with the margin already determined. And the second platoon being in there, you get the second team guys in there getting reps. So I don't think that Tulane will just completely gash them, but I think they'll have enough success to keep running the football, which will really work the clock. I could also see North Texas throttling down the octane here in the second half if they are holding the lead, making these possessions a lot more important and trying to run the football or dink and dunk without a lot of the pass game explosivity. We saw Mestamaker a couple games ago throw for 463 yards on 18 completions. I don't think we'll see them shred Tulane's pass coverage unit that badly, but I think North Texas will score a fair share of points here. Tulane has very little explosiveness in the pass game, so I don't think we'll see Retzloff be able to throw them out of it if they're behind. And their red zone offense has been poor this season, just 28 touchdowns in 50 attempts. And North Texas has been very good at bowing up in the red zone defensively this season. I think we'll see this game script just play. This is kind of a contrarian play, but I think this plays to the under. And I actually do like Tulane's team total under 31.5. And that doesn't mean Tulane can't win the game. I think there's a lot of paths to both these teams winning. But I just feel like North Texas's defense with Skylar Cassidy and the guys that they brought over from Sam Houston, they've done a really good job this season scheming it up against their opponents. I don't think this is going to be the Plinko board of touchdowns that everybody thinks it's going to be. I think this will be a little bit more of a defensive battle than people realize. I think we've seen that sort of sentiment also agreed with in the market as this total has come down now to 66, 65.5, down from 68.5 at open. But I like Tulane's team total under 31.5 here.
There it is. And that's actually not the juice side. Under 31.5 right now is minus 110 in a few books that I'm currently looking at. That's interesting play very, very contrarian playing. But that actually still kind of baits into, my handicap, that running the ball, getting the clock all the way down. I think there's a chance this whole game goes under, and maybe Tulane does go under because of it. Another problem that I have with North Texas is they just did not get the big part of the schedule. They got Navy, and we all knew Navy was fraudulent, and they beat Navy by 14 points or so. But, literally, they got to avoid Memphis. They got to avoid East Carolina, which is a very strong team in the AAC, as we know. And I think that's an important thing to think about in this situation. So, good call. I wrote this down, and I'm going to look at that as well and make it a possible play. Let's move on to the next game. We have UNLV versus Boise State. Boise -4 total, 58.5. Josh, what do you have?
This is the way that it shook out after all the metrics were plugged into the computer system and they hit the submit button and it spit out these two teams as opposed to New Mexico or San Diego State. San Diego State didn't take care of business, and so this is the matchup we get here. But we've got a team in Boise that's got UNLV's number. They've won 10 straight games. They beat them earlier in the season by 25. I don't think that script is going to play out this exact same way this time. I've been impressed with UNLV's defensive performance the last month of the season. I think Paul Gunther is doing some good things with that group there. They've held 3 of their last 4 opponents to 17 points or less. And we've seen UNLV really get the ground game humming. 640 yards the last 2 weeks combined on the ground. And I think we'll see the Rebs get Jet Thomas running downhill, use Calandria in the run game to exploit a weaker Boise front here. And I would think if it's UNLV here, you try to outpossess Boise State. You try to keep your offense on the field. You try to move the ball on the ground and protect that defense a little bit, because the fact of the matter is they gave up 56 points in the first meeting. Now, the other interesting thing is Maddox Madsen is coming back for Boise. I don't think he's fully healthy after that lower leg injury. That was projected for him to be out for the season, and now he's coming back after 4 weeks. I bet we'll see him immobilized. I bet we'll see him look a little jerky back there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have to pull the plug quickly if he's truly not ready to go, and then they go back to Cutforth, at which point it could be really tricky for the Boise offense to get going here. So I think UNLV has a chance in this game to make it a real close, competitive, fun game. We could get a little precipitation, which might end up being snow on Friday night in Boise, so that could make it a fun watch. I think the Rebs will have a little bit of a better game plan than they did in the first meeting, and I think that they can keep this game close. I have not run to the window on this one at the current time, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if UNLV plays a little better than the first meeting. What do you think about this one?
I made it to the window, and I'm taking the Rebs. This is a situation, in my opinion, that, just like Drew said, it should have been New Mexico. I agree. I think New Mexico just choked against Boise, and I think that New Mexico was the better. And I think Utah State just doing people no favors with their multiple chokes this year, because they've had multiple chokes this year, which was annoying. But I think you're right. Maddox Madsen coming back after a month. Is he really completely healthy? And I thought Max Cutforth did a good job in that championship game. He did what he had to do. It was more about Utah State choking, in my opinion. But, this team is still without, obviously Genty from last year, and they just do not look like they were last year when they played and made that into the playoffs. Their game against Notre Dame, they weren't even in the game. And that was before Notre Dame fixed their defense. I mean, it's just kind of, Notre Dame just wanted the game to get over with by the third quarter, and they did that. They just ran the ball down their throats. And then UCF in the beginning, I mean, do you count beginning games? I don't count the beginning games as much, but it's still something to see. UNLV has improved since that ugly FCS game in week 1 that everybody thought UNLV was going to be really bad, and I actually thought so too. But the defense started figuring out. They only allowed 26 to a solid Utah State team, only 10 points to Hawaii at home. It kind of told me that UNLV is kind of serious this year. Their offense ranks 11th in EPA. Boise State's ranks 53rd. Now, Boise's got the better defense, but they just can't stop the run. 121st in defensive rush EPA for Boise State, man. I think the Rebs can do some damage in eighth in rush EPA, rushing the ball here. Net yards per play is actually the slight edge to UNLV. Maybe you can just say Maddox Maxson was missing for 3 or 4 games, whatever. It's not like Boise State's got some massive edge there. I see a close game. I see Boise maybe winning by 2 or 3 points, but I'm taking the Rebs past the 3. I agree. Take the road dog.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll say about UNLV, you look at some of their performances defensively down the stretch. Hawaii couldn't get a first down against those guys. Hawaii has shredded most of the teams they've played this season, and they could not accumulate a first down against UNLV. Very, very impressive. And what I've noticed is UNLV is playing at the point of attack on their opponent's side of the line of scrimmage. They're getting to the quarterback. They're tackling running backs in the backfield. That'll be critical here. In the first meeting against Boise, Sire Gaines and the other running back for Boise were able to accumulate 2 or 3 yards before first contact. UNLV's got to get in the backfield and hit those running backs early, and I think if they do that, they can get off the field.
100%. I'm with you. Let's go Rebs. Let's move on to the next game. We have the BYU Cougs on Saturday. Now, all these games we discussed, we should have mentioned all home fields for the home team, and that's why you're seeing the little extra juice on the Boise side, James Madison side, and all that. But these are all neutral. You got BYU at Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is minus 12.5. The total of this game is 49.5. Woo! This is a big game for the committee. Because if BYU wins, you can't take Texas Tech out. They're so smug, maybe they will because no one's going to stop them, but you know, this is a one where Notre Dame is a big Texas Tech fan. I assume Miami's a big Texas Tech fan too. I don't know. It just depends on how it all plays out with Duke, Virginia as well. But my number can't get to 12.5, Duck. I'm at 9.5. It's not like I'm rushing to bet BYU either because we saw these teams play each other and BYU wasn't even sniffing any success against them. And, you know, it's funny. It's like it would sure benefit the Big 12 like it did the ACC last year if BYU does win because I think both are in because they can't just change the rankings by that much. What do you think about this one, buddy?
Yeah, and you really can't change the rankings by that much. And, I mean, BYU is really the team that could be the bid stealer. If they win this game, they're in as the conference champ. You can't drop Texas Tech out. So then you're bumping Alabama or Notre Dame or Oklahoma in that case. So I think all those teams are fans of Texas Tech this week. Feels like we've seen this narrative play out. Just look no further than the first meeting this season where Texas Tech won 29-7. BYU had 67 rushing yards, 2.5 yards per carry, just 255 total yards and the 1 touchdown. BYU put 1 drive together the entire game. Their first half drives were punt, missed field goal, punt. And this Texas Tech defensive front 7 is absolutely nasty. 3rd in yards per play, 1st in yards per rush, top 3 in pass defense, havoc, explosiveness surrendered, all very, very strong. Only 2 teams this season have surpassed 17 points against the Red Raiders defensively. I don't trust Bachmeier to throw BYU out of tough situations when they get to 3rd and medium or worse. And now Texas Tech is playing for a legitimate top 4 spot in the playoff. I don't think they need the style points to win this game. And I think what will happen in the second half is this will trend to a slower pace game. I would expect Texas Tech to run the football a ton. You can't do anything here to get Baron Morton hurt because the backup is already out for the year. And so now you would have to turn to Mitch Griffiths or their 4th string quarterback, Logan, who is just really, really a downgrade from Baron Morton. So I think Texas Tech runs the ball and salts away the clock in the second half. I think they'll win this game comfortably. But, I mean, we've seen the path for BYU. They could hardly get a first down in that first meeting, struggled on 3rd down, couldn't get to the red zone, let alone they ran 3 plays in Texas Tech territory in the first 3 quarters. BYU team total under 17.5 is one of my favorite plays of the week.
You know what's interesting about Texas Tech stats? I mean, look at these scores. 42-0, 43-20, 29-7, 48-9, 49-0. You're not getting what they would do if there was another quarter. You know, and that's and that's the problem with some of these metrics, because if they're taking the whole game of data and this happens with Ohio State. This happens with college basketball too. It's like at blowout mode, the team's actually better than their power rating. I think Texas Tech might even be short here because of it. And I think the market sees that a little bit, and that's why it's at 12.5. But dang, you're sure getting me close to wanting to lay these points in this situation, man. I'm certainly going to put that as a lean. There's a lot of people that are going to have good old Texas Tech and Virginia in the parlay, because that parlay is like, minus 115, minus 110. I mean, if you want to throw James Madison on it, you might get it close to even money, right? But I could see a lot of people wanting to go that route. Andrew's like, I would love to see Texas Tech in the Fiesta Bowl. Absolutely, buddy. Arizona style. That would be fun. I have a buddy that's actually one of the heads of the committee there that's going to be there. Unfortunately, we'll be out of town that weekend. But no, man, I'm close to laying it. But I also love your team total under for BYU, and I'm going to write that down as well, because I may be attacking that 17.5. You know what's nice about these team totals? They're out. They're out in these books. Usually you have to wait till Saturday or Friday night or whatever. No, they're out in most of these books that you're able to bet them at. So I love that. Western Michigan hosting Miami, Ohio. It's back to 2.5. Total's 43.5. I bet Western Michigan, and the line went the wrong way. I thought it was going to go to 3. I'm a little surprised that it didn't. I know Miami, Ohio's got the more pedigree, that they're used to being more in this situation, and that is part of a handicap. I mean, I that is a concern for me for like in Western Michigan, but you also have to remember that their quarterback quit on them 3-4 weeks ago. He's like, I'm not playing Toledo. That's the team I came from. I'm just going to get ready for the draft. It's like
stunning development.
Because you're going to be drafted, buddy. Yeah, they're Daquan Finn's going to be drafted. I highly doubt that's going to happen. If that does happen, there's something wrong with the NFL teams. Well, it probably is, but back to the game. I love what Western Michigan has done this year. They finally put a complete team together without losing everybody. They surprised me a little bit this year. What's weird about them is they're actually a net negative yards per play. So they're actually net negative 4.05, but they're winning games. And when they go against the bigger opponents, they've taken care of business against Ohio. Sure, they're getting outgained, but they kind of do the little things right. When you see the 21-3 against UMass, you're a little bit like, what? But they beat Toledo. They did what they had to do, and I kind of think that the schedule against Michigan State, North Texas, and at Illinois, and then Toledo right away, I think that kind of made their net yards per play way into the negatives, and then they kind of had to build their way back up as the team improved throughout the MAC. This is more of a fade for Miami of Ohio for me. Where are you at on this one?
Well, let's just look back to the first meeting, a meeting that Western Michigan lost, but they dominated the first 3 quarters. They were up 17-9. They had allowed 220 yards through 3 quarters, and Miami of Ohio had not scored a touchdown. It took Daquan Finn heroics in the fourth quarter, along with 8 minutes of bad Western Michigan football for Miami of Ohio to come back and win. Well, Daquan Finn is no longer there, as you had alluded to. And you look at Miami of Ohio on offense, I don't think there's a less creative offense, anybody more original than Miami of Ohio. Uninspiring, non-dramatic. They're going to run the ball 61% of the time. And you can almost tell based on the formation that they roll out there what sort of play call we're going to see. But now you've got, because they pulled the plug on the second string quarterback. So now you've got the third string quarterback, Thomas Gotkowski, who's going to be in Detroit, in Ford Field, under those bright lights, lining up against the most consistent unit in the MAC all season, which is Western Michigan's defense. I don't see it here. I don't see it going well. I don't see them throwing their way out of trouble. I don't think they're going to run the ball very well. And I've actually been more impressed with Western Michigan's offense the last couple of weeks. Excuse me. just with a little bit more creativity in the run game. They're getting Jaden Buckley running downhill. They're using Brock Lowry in the run game. I think Western Michigan can really do some fun things here offensively to get Miami of Ohio to be uncomfortable. And then you look at the Western Michigan pass rush, they have two major sack dudes, Nadeem Tucker and Rod McGraw, that are going to be coming after you. 17 sacks between the two of them. And I think that they're just going to make it really uncomfortable for Miami of Ohio. I have no issue with the play. In fact, it's a play I have in pocket. My Western Michigan -1.5.
All right, I'm loving it. Great. I think it's their time, and Ford Field will be rocking with 1,400 fans. I think Andrews might be saying right there. 1,400. Let's do it. Let's move on to the next game. We have, Georgia versus Alabama. Well, look at here. Alabama's +2.5. The total is 47.5. I have a play in this game. You know what's funny? You look at all the metrics, they're freaking very close to each other. There's just something about, and look, I mean, Alabama's taken care of this series for 9 years, or 9 out of 10 years they've won this. Of course, Georgia got better, and then they won it against Alabama in the championship, and we all know that. That was their one win. But I hate using the eye test for things, but man, Alabama has just been so dang fortunate with explosive plays, with flags at the right time, with getting outgained and just winning. It's kind of blowing my mind. Both teams about exactly 1 net yard per play on the positive, 27th and 28th in offensive EPA. That's where they rank. Alabama's got the little defensive EPA 16th, and Georgia 33rd, yet Georgia allows less explosive plays, 16th to Alabama, ranking 61st. Alabama's path to victories through the air. Georgia's weakness on defense is the opponent pass EPA, so that worries me a little bit. Yet Georgia, with Gunnar Stockton's legs, I think is their path to victory, and Alabama only ranks 55th in defensive rushing success rate. Alabama just can't run the ball well this year. And so it's one of those situations where I feel like Georgia can bait them a little bit better. I think Kirby Smart is right now the better coach still over DeBoer, and I think he's going to have his defense playing, ready for that. Maybe you don't got to cheat up much against the run. Expect the pass. Expect some creativeness. Expect Simpson to run too. If I would probably bet Simpson's rushing yards over if I had to. I'll look for that one when I get that prop market out. But Alabama is just getting by with a lot of fortunate luck. The +8 in turnover differential. They should have lost to South Carolina. They should have lost to Missouri. And they needed a roughing the passer call to really seal it against Auburn. Sure, maybe they get the 3 points, but maybe Auburn doesn't. I'm not going down that route. It's Auburn. It's freaking Auburn, dude. Georgia on the money line. Now Georgia didn't do well last week, and I just feel like they were just uninterested of being there, and they just knew they were ahead. Just wanted to get the game through. That's how I feel Georgia was against Georgia Tech. I like Georgia on the money line more than anything, -130-ish. I laid 1.5, but it's at 2.5, so I'm not going to recommend 2. I think 2 is a very popular number now, so that's my play, Duck. What do you think?
Real interesting game, and you're so right about the fact that Alabama has just conceded to the fact that they can't run the football. Stunning with the offensive line talent they have and the good running backs that they've got in the running back room, but they just cannot run the football. So I think that they'll air it out significantly more here, and they'll go to the pass attack exclusively early in this game. The Georgia front seven is not going to put the fear of God into you. They're talented, but not nearly the vaunted front seven that we've seen in prior years. And so I think Alabama will have time to throw the ball. I think Georgia will gash them on the ground. I think it'll be a back and forth affair. This is so much about like two heavyweight teams that are bouting against each other, and the total is low, and we expect this slug it out defensive game. But the last time these teams met, there was only 45 points, but there was 38 at half. And then the last score came with 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. I don't know if we see that again here in the SEC championship game, where we have seen these games have a propensity to be higher scoring than most. I think Alabama plays out of desperation. I'm not sold that I don't think Georgia needs to win this one to get in. I think we can both agree on that.
Right.
But if Alabama loses 41 to 21, 41-17, are they in?
They're not going to allow that. They never allow
So
that stuff. It's going to be a close game.
probably so, but I don't know. I think both of these offenses will have an advantage here, and I think that we'll see it break open in the second half. I lean over. I think this game could be a 31-27 type of game, 31-24. I think this game can clear this total.
Well, a matchup ago, not last week, not in September 27th, they got to 45 points, but it felt like they should have put up more. Both of them had 350 plus yards apiece. It went to almost 80 points the time before that. So I do see what you're saying on the over. I don't want to take the under in this one in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I don't disagree. I think Georgia does get them, but it would take the way the committee set up Alabama by bumping them over Notre Dame for beating Auburn really is what they're saying that Bama's in most likely. And it would take a blowout for them to go out, but just from the eye test, and I hate saying that because it's so like public and crappy, and I just feel like I watch these games and I have to use some of that what I see, and you can say the turnovers are going to even out, +8 margin to even margin, right? So I guess I'll use that. But I'll tell you this: if it got to 3, I'd probably pull a little bit back on Alabama. I would. Let's see here. Jam Miller out. I don't know. Is Jam Miller out?
Questionable.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
And I think it's a good conversation to have, and we won't go in depth here, but maybe in the off season, Kiev. Sports betting is an art, and there are certain sort of things in each silo that you can quantify in the metric sheet, and you can look at the X's and O's and the Willies and the Joes and the coaching and the schematics and the matchup and all the metrics. But there is something to the gut play. And there is something to you looking at the eyeballs and what you see on the screen and say, yeah, this just doesn't pass the sniff test. And that's part of the art of handicapping, where you can make a play and you have some rationale, but maybe it doesn't check all the boxes. But more often than not, when you're a sharp guy like yourself, those plays can work out well. And so we'll have a more in-depth conversation on that later on in the offseason. But I think the art of capping and the art of betting really does include the gut play and the eyeball test. And I think it's okay to introduce those elements, even though they're not quantifiable.
Right. All right. Well, I love it. Let's talk more about that, because I think the art and spots is at least as important these days to handicapping as well as just metrics itself, because metrics change for a reason every week. They change, All right. I'm excited to watch this game. I'm going to be at my son's baseball tournament, but the iPad will be on next to me, so that's where I'll be watching Alabama versus Georgia. By the time I'm going to leave like right after the game ends, the game before that, and then move right into a little Alabama Georgia when I get there. So I'll be watching Western Michigan end the game when I get there. Texas Tech will probably already be done. Ohio State, Indiana +4.5, +4.5. The total's 47.5. What do you have for us on this baby?
I understand the steam to Indiana, really solid team, very well coached, and Ohio State is in, dare I say, a little bit of a sandwich spot here after just finally getting the monkey off their back and beating Michigan for the first time in 4 years. And that's a game that program really, really cares about. And Ohio State also might have bigger fish to fry with going out and winning a national championship. I kind of think the motivation does favor Indiana here. I'm sure Cignetti would like to talk forever about him leading an Indiana program to a Big Ten championship that before he got there, they could never have even dreamed of this. Right. And so I think Indiana is absolutely showing up ready to play. I think this is a matchup of two great defenses here. You look at the Buckeyes, their defense is absolutely elite. 5th nationally in yards per rush, 1st in overall rushing yards per play. These guys do not allow explosive plays. They don't allow successful plays. Only 7 points per game given up all season for Ohio State. I can see the offense possibly coming out a little sluggish, and I can actually see Indiana's defense having some success against Ohio State early. Indiana's defense 11th in yards per pass allowed, third in explosive rushing, top 10 in yards per play and red zone efficiency. And I don't think either one of these quarterbacks is going to absolutely light up the other defense at all. I think we're going to have a kind of feeling out process in the first half. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see punt, field goal, punt in early possessions. Earlier in the week when we had the 48s or the 48s and a half out there, I played the first half under. It was a little juicy at 24 and a half. I think we're still good at 24, but I think if you shop around, you can still find that. I just feel like this game starts out a little slower. We've seen Ohio State really bludgeon you in the first half on the ground, and then they lean on you in the second half, and they take the deep shots in the second half to their two talented receivers. Could be a little bit of that. But I think it's a lower scoring first half. So I took first half under.
First half under. Well, that's interesting. You know what's it at right now? Because I'm waiting on something. Here's why it's at 23 and a half still. I believe so. 23 and a half. Is that the number you got?
I got 24.
Good number. Okay, so I need 24 in 24 and a half, and I'll tell you why, Josh. This is not like a disagreement, but it's kind of like me scared. The two things I'm scared about is this. One is that these teams' defenses are awesome, but they also have played some massively shitty offenses, man, especially Ohio State. I mean, okay, Damon Williams, they did well against him, and I will give them credit. And that was on the road. It was a weird game. They just couldn't punch it in the touchdown. I think Ohio State's red zone is second to none. But it's just looking at the Big Ten, it just was so easy for them with Drew Aller being out when they played Penn State. There is just nobody in Ohio State's way. I give Ohio State credit, too, because that's what they deserve. But the same can be almost said to Indiana as well. I'm not saying that her defense isn't great, because it is. But the other problem that I have that I'm waiting on is the field, more of a track, right? It's more of a situation where they're going to be indoors at Lucas Oil Stadium in a dome. And I wonder what those amazing receivers like Smith and Tate are going to look like in that situation. I got burned last week on the first half under, and the full game went under, against Michigan. It's like, seriously? It's just like sometimes you just get it backwards. And, I wish I didn't get burned, but it's a situation where I want 24. Okay, I totally am with you. I think it's going to be a little nerves in the beginning, especially for Indiana. But as far as the side, I have a home field advantage for Ohio State with a point, even though it's in Indiana, just because Ohio State's been there before. That's their place, I think that the Big Ten likes Ohio State more. They're going to have half the fans, I think, still. I still think there's going to be a ton of Ohio fans, but they have the pedigree, right? So I do give Ohio State a little bit. Normally I have this as a 3-point spread. I have this as a 4-point spread, which is literally right on the freaking number, man. So I'm with you. I'm just waiting. I think I'll get it, too. I'm going to wait a little bit longer for that first half under. Connor Hibbett, looking at the upcoming bowl season because of the new portal window, do you think we'll still see some teams shorthanded, especially teams with coaching changes? I'm going to say abso-freaking-lutely. This is just kids do not want to play and screw up their leg, man, especially when they have a shot to transfer to a big team. There's going to be some team. Wasn't there a game canceled last year that there was so many people out, Josh?
Well, that was after Charles Huff took the job at Southern Miss. He took half the Marshall team with, and so they had to pull the plug. Marshall won the Sun Belt and didn't play in a bowl game, had to pull the plug, and then they flopped over to Louisiana Tech to play Army. Louisiana Tech had sent their players home. They were 5-7, didn't get to a bowl game, sent their players home, had to call them back to piecemeal together a week-long practice regime, and then they went and played Army in one of the bowl games in Louisiana. But Connor, you hit it right on the head, man. This is the biggest pivot I've had to make in any of my situational prep as a college football bettor is during bowl season. I would look at these lines the day that they come out, and I'd try to fire away on some that I think there's value in or try to hit some totals. I'm not making plays until a day or two before the game on any of these that are outside of the playoff, because the participation report is critical. Coaches coming and going is critical. Players opting out, deciding they're going to play, they're not going to play. Some players were playing for, remember Miami and their quarterback, Cam Ward, he played for a half and then took the shoulder pads off at half against Iowa State and said, yeah, I'm good. It's like there's just so much of that goofy stuff going on that it's more important now than ever during bowl season to get your fingerprint on the participation report and figure out who's in and who's out, because it makes a world of difference.
Be following guys like Duck at Step on a Duck 1 for great information like that, and all his colleagues at the Action Network. It is so important to see those participation reports. And the truth is, sometimes you just get smacked in the face, man. There's times where I faded a team because they were missing everybody, and then you find out later, 2 days before the game or even the day of the game, that the other team decided not to play either. I mean, it is just such an art to this, and it is so important to get. You're just playing craps right now until you know. What I will say is, what I do lean on is the bigger teams in general with a smaller bowl game will usually have less participants when they're playing a group of 5 team. So try to look for those bowls. I know they try to set up bowls within the same style, but I love the ones that have that mix, because that's kind of telling you what really, it's a lot more important for a team, like a Memphis or, South Florida, even without their coach, to try to put a statement down and beat a team, because they aren't always missing players in the transfer portal as much as others. So think about that. Now, once in a while, you'll still get great players from small teams move. So, I mean, we saw a lot of that in the quarterbacks over the last few years, right?
Yeah, and then the other part of that, too, is you can always count on the service academies showing up. Army, Navy, Air Force didn't make a bowl this year, but Army, Navy, they show up every year.
Army and Navy you can count on, my friend, but we'll quick get to that game. We have to quick cover this one. We only have a few minutes left. It's Virginia against Duke, clearly. Duke minus 3.5 Virginia is. The total is 57.5. Duck, you have something special to tell us about this game, and I'm very excited to hear it. But Virginia, I'm just telling you, this is my final play. I took it at 2.5. I was shocked when it opened at 2.5 on Sunday. This is, I think, blowout city, in my opinion, for Virginia. We can talk all we want, how we want Duke to win this game, but I don't even think that Mensa's mom thinks that they're going to win this game, my man. I think that they're going to be outclassed and outplayed all day in this situation. It's funny how big this game is and how it just happens to be the last game on Saturday night. 57.5 in total. Part of me wants to see Duke win just to see more chaos, but dude, I like money. I'm rooting for Virginia. When my first loss against Virginia was that awful NC State game where he threw the pick in the end zone, and that should have been cover city the whole time. But the thing that changed for Virginia since that game, and really throughout the full season, is that Virginia's defense has gotten a lot better as they kept moving on. They kept getting more powerful. They ranked 20th in success rate, 22nd in EPA. If you cut the season in half, it's even better than that. Duke's defense ranks 120th in EPA, 98th in success rate. Duke at 0.07 net yards per play. Duke should not be in this situation. I think it's an embarrassment to college football. They better make some rules about it, because this could be a bigger blowout. I say take some alt lines as well as a minus 3.5, Duck.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it's really hard for me to be objective here on this one, because I have a Virginia future at 200-1 that I'm not hedging off of here. So we're letting it roll with the Wahoos. I like
200
I like
to
the
1.
match. I love it, and I'm holding on to it, and we're going to let this baby ride, and I'm going to hopefully be cashing a nice juicy future on Saturday night.
Oh, I am rooting for you so hard, because that way you'll fly down and see me, or we'll meet in Vegas, and then we'll just get to watch more games.
I'll do that anyway. Man. But, I do like the matchup for Virginia. Duke's defense cannot be counted on to accrue any stops here with regularity. Like you said, 118th in yards per play, 125th against the pass, just an awful secondary. Defense cannot prevent explosive plays. They're bad in the red zone. UVA outgained these guys in the first meeting by 300 yards, and the Wahoos were up 31-3 in the fourth quarter. And they maybe even left a little bit of meat on the bone there. They could have had another touchdown or two in that one. Chandler Morris, their quarterback, shredded these guys, absolutely shredded them. 9 yards per pass attempt, had a couple touchdown passes. I do think Duke will have a little more success offensively. Duke played their worst conference game of the season offensively against Virginia. And I think that there will be a little bit better output from Duke here. This should be a fun, high-scoring game. I expect UVA to be in the 30s. So if I was making a play on this without any other futures positions, I'd look Virginia's team total over 30.5. Tony Elliott's done an exquisite job with this defense. They are playing with their hair on fire. Absolutely consistent team all season defensively. Again, I think Virginia will score in the 30s. I hope it's enough to get the job done.
I think it is, my man. This is going to be a great game, and I'm going to recommend an alt line all the way up to 6.5, maybe even 7.5 if you want. And obviously you can go farther if you want to, but I think Duke's outclassed, outmatched. Like you said, 300 yards is massive. Let's move on to our next segment. Army Navy. What's funny? We don't have a lot of time left, but all I want to say is that even though my numbers never always agree, I actually have Navy as a bigger favorite than 4.5. I would always take the dog past 3 in this. These teams know each other so much, and it always goes under, doesn't it?
It always goes under unless it goes to double overtime, at which point it went over a couple of years back. But,
yeah.
16 out of the last 18 years it's gone under. These two teams know each other super familiarly. And
last year it went over the closing line. It went over just by a couple points, but you could have got it higher before 30. It went to 42 and it was 39, but before that, yeah.
I think I would still. It's such a hard game to bet on. I would lean Navy. I think Navy is the superior team. I think they're stronger in the trenches. I think they're more explosive offensively, and Army has just kind of been a shell of what they were last season. They lost their fullback Udo to Arizona State. They lost Bryson Daly. They lost their tackles, left and right tackle, and their center. Their offensive line coach went to Central Michigan, and look what they've done. They were in contention to win the MAC. There's so many pieces offensively that they've had to retool with, and that's just not the same Army team with the same pop. I think they're really going to struggle to move the ball here. And so this is another one where I think you're probably okay to take an under. Run heavy. This game will be quick moving with the clock. We should only see about 12 to 14 total pass attempts both ways. I would lean under. I think Navy is the better team. And so if I had to bet the side, I'd probably lay it with Navy.
All right, I disagree. I bet Army. It's interesting. The dog keeps winning. This is what Andrew says, which is true. And it did go over last year, Andrew. Yeah, the Army's been weird since their loss to East Carolina 6-28, and the week before that they only lost to North Texas by 7. They scored against North Texas. They kept it within 7 to Tulane. They beat Air Force. They beat Temple.
Should have beat Tulane.
They should have beat Tulane. They lost to Tulsa by 1, which was a weird game. And they beat UTSA. This is a sneaky getting better Army team, man. I'm going to lean Army for now. I didn't completely cap it, but let's have a little disagreement at the end for some fun.
That's all right. Hey, we got some time to change my opinion, and we got some time to
change
this game.
We have time to change mine as well, my friend. Let's go to Beer Bet Bangers. Any plus money dogs or fun bets that you have, and I wish you could re-give us Virginia 200-1, go back in time, but what do we have for this week?
I could see UNLV winning on the money line. I'll give you an FCS play. North Dakota is 6.5-point underdogs against Tarleton State. Their losses this year for the Fighting Sioux are by 3 points against Kansas State, 1 point against Montana, 5 points against the University of South Dakota, who's in the playoffs. They lost by 5 to North Dakota State, and they lost by 3 points against South Dakota State. All of their losses are quality losses. Tarleton State plays in a much weaker conference at FCS. I think North Dakota is really good. If you want a little beer money fun here, I would take North Dakota on the money line.
Funny, Drew just said K-State lost to Army, but Army before that lost to Tarleton. I was on Tarleton that week. I think Duck remembers pretty well. Okay, well, there you go. Little North Dakota action. I'm going to try to save the committee from embarrassment, and I'm going to take Miami plus 650 to make the playoffs right now at DraftKings for a beer bet banger. Look, man, if they I'm hoping they're just kind of having to come to Jesus, because if you leave Miami out and put Notre Dame in, and you're not leaving them both out, which would still look ugly, you are just saying you should never, ever schedule a tough game, because that means it didn't happen. They have the same record as Oklahoma. You're putting Oklahoma in because of their Alabama win. Don't tell me it's Michigan, because Michigan is not a good team. Michigan got blown out by USC, blown out by Ohio State, blown out by Oklahoma. This is a situation where it is clear to me that they have to match up. And actually, a lot of Miami fans are kind of excited, and they think that's what's going to happen. Now, obviously, Notre Dame might be the one left out, but, if all chaos happens, we'll see. Alabama gets blown out, maybe it's them. I don't know. But it's a situation where I think they could save face by putting Miami in. Plus 650 is a good number. My man, any Heisman thoughts before we go?
I don't know if there's a lot of value as we sit here and speak today, but I will be surprised if Diego Pavia does not win it.
Okay,
With all the media pomp and circumstance and all the stuff that's been going on, the storylines, what he's done for that Vanderbilt program. And remember, before he got there, Clark Lee was getting in there and getting his feet wet. They were losing by 27 at home to East Tennessee State. They were non-competitive in the SEC. Since Diego Pavia has been at that program, he's the most valuable player. You take Sayan or Fernando Mendoza off of Indiana and Ohio State, and each of those teams is absolutely still winning 9 or 10 games. You take Pavia away from Vanderbilt, they're 4-8.
I agree. And what's fun, it sucks is I have Mendoza 14-1 for a beer bet banger. It's not big. I have Sayan at 1 plus 180. To hedge back, and I just did it for twice as much. But here's Diego Pavia, just had to beat Tennessee last week, and put himself from 4-1 all the way down to now. There's no question that I wouldn't vote Diego Pavia if I'm a voter, because he's the most valuable person to his team, which I believe is the same thing as a Heisman. But this is the committee. This is a team that's looking at playoffs or not. You're rewarding a guy that did not have Jalen Daniels numbers. I'd be shocked if they did it. I would vote for him myself, though, Josh. I certainly would, because he deserves it. But he's got family member issues.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see that award.
Yeah, his brother getting drunk and kicked out, his mom kissing everybody. There's just a lot of weird, ugly stuff with that. And he doesn't have the gaudy numbers, so that's the problem. But, man, I'd be okay if Diego makes it, because I'll have to kiss my small bets goodbye. But so what? I think that that just is up my alley. So I agree with you, Duck. You're awesome. You're always awesome when you come on the show. Could you let our listeners and viewers know where to get your great information in place?
Yeah, so I'm at the Action Network. I do the G5 Deep Dive with Michael Calabrese, which drops on Wednesdays on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We have a Friday live show and Saturday live show. I co-host the BetUS live show on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I do the Kyle Kerm show on Thursdays at midnight Eastern time. I've been on your great program several times. You and I and a few others do spaces together routinely on Friday nights on Twitter. And it's just always a privilege to get together with you, Kiev, and talk college football. I love your show. I love your channel. And it's just been fantastic to be a part of it this season with you.
You're the best, Duck. Thanks again for coming on. Make sure you guys check out at Step on a Duck 1 if you want the best information for bowl season. Now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by FanDuel Sports, a proud partner with the NFL. All right, sharp money as of Wednesday, December 3rd. Only a few really small movements. Indiana plus 5.5 to plus 4 at Ohio versus Ohio State. 54% of the tickets and 95% of the money. Virginia minus 2.5 to minus 3.5 versus Duke. 66% tickets, 78% of the money. Sharp totals, the only real movement was BYU versus Texas Tech under 50.5 to 49.5, 35% of the tickets and 44% of the money. The other totals are pretty stagnant from where the kind of like the openers were. I expect that, we're going to get a little bit more movement during the rest of the week. All right, time to recap our plays. And official for this podcast. We did pretty well last week. I believe we went 5-3. Western Michigan, we gave out Monday for the Tuesday show. Georgia, money line. Virginia, -3.5. Kennesaw State over. Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State, I should say, over 59.5. Texas Tech is a lean. And I'm also probably going to take a Virginia outline, just to let you know. So we are counting the Kennesaw State over, UNLV +4, Virginia -3.5, and Georgia money line, and Western Michigan -2.5. My friends, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions for us, feel free to tweet us at The Oddsbreakers. Email us at info@theoddsbreakers.com. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and go get some winners.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.